want to thank everybody who's been with me, my Xbox clan.
When Kobe's going back to play Madison Square Garden, and he's like, hey, hook me up with dinner with Heath Ledger.
Like Russell Westbrook, that was a great feat the other day. I couldn't even tweet it out.
It's Coach Frank Vogel here, full of enthusiasm and positive energy.
Ask me what I like to play with Kevin Durant. Ask me about Kyrie Irving, Giannis. Ask me about Embiid, Ben Simmons. Go ahead, all of them.
There was a time when the Israelites were wandering in the desert and all of a sudden bread came down from heaven. That's kind of what today feels like to have KCP join.
Welcome back to Bulls vs. Blazers Patreon feed. Since you're subscribed to the Patreon, you already know where to follow us, where to subscribe, all of that. I'm Sean Hyken. With me, as always, Eric Gunderson.
Yo, a third day of hoops. Not the first full day, but like the best full day so far.
Is this the best full day? I actually think yesterday was better because there were actually close games yesterday. We had 2 games go to overtime. This time, basically every game except for Lakers-Raptors was a blowout.
Yeah, I guess the matchups, though, were, like, juicier today. Like, even if the games didn't exactly – and, hey, as someone who was betting on some of these games today, I was glad that the perception was that they were all going to be close because I hit on the Miami game against Denver and also not the Philly game. I hit on the what was the other game today? Oklahoma City against Utah.
I was going to ask you how you're holding up with T.J. Warren destroying your parlay on the Sixers.
I'm upset. I mean, I saw what was happening in the late first quarter. Like I saw what the Sixers looked like when Embiid wasn't on the court, and I was like, I have to abort. I can't put all my eggs in this parlay, so I hedged with a Pacers bet once I saw that Ben Simmons literally was not guarding T.J. Warren. And I swear to God, Warren was stepping in to three-pointer after three-pointer, and that was Simmons' man. And it's like, I mean, I didn't think we were going to segue into Sixers talk so hard, but I mean, of all the losses so far of the bubble, I think that has to be maybe the most disappointing one. I mean, that was a game that they were tied with Indiana. They were 7 or 6.5 point favorites, 6 point favorites.
Indy lost Sabonis.
And Warren just goes apeshit. I mean, that is a terrible loss, in my opinion. And Al Horford was okay. Shake Milton gets benched in the second quarter after he got to start. He picked up a 4th foul early in that quarter, but, he wasn't trusted to stay in there. We thought Ben Simmons at the 4 was like going to be this, as Brett Brown said, this philosophical reimagining of what the Sixers could be. But no Embiid, they sucked. They're the same old Sixers.
I thought he was going to be shooting a lot of threes because there was that one clip of him shooting a 3 from one of the practices that went viral.
Yeah, I mean, Philly invokes a lot of feelings because they were, other than the Bucks and maybe even more than the Bucks, were like the sexy pick to win the East this year. And it's giving me a lot of flashbacks to the Celtics last year. Obviously, Al Horford was on both teams.
Now, who was fraudulently bought into the Celtics last year? I can't think of anybody.
I was into the Celtics last year. I believed wrongly that they could win the championship last year and be kind of a sleeper team. And they looked good after game 1 of the Milwaukee series, and then they completely imploded. And that was because they were just never that together. And I get the same vibe with Philadelphia. Josh Richardson took 4 shots today. He played 30 minutes. And he's probably their best shooter. And frankly, they rely entirely way too much on Korkmaz for my liking.
Did the Sixers outsmart themselves with the Horford thing?
I think they did.
It feels like they just sort of signed him to take him off of the Celtics because Embiid had so many problems with him the last couple of years in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And then he just has not been good at all this year, and he hasn't fit in well next to Embiid. So now it feels like they just kind of signed him to take him off of another team, and then he hasn't really been a fit with them. So it just feels like they kind of it was sort of like a galaxy brain approach to team building. I feel like.
Right. And listen, I get that it seems like there's a little bit of a resurgence in like quote unquote tall ball. Like you look at the Bucks, you look at the Lakers, you look at the Raptors, like these
Nuggets are playing Fireball 4.
Well, we'll get to that. Yeah, unfortunately, they're playing Fireball 4 and not NBA basketball. Ice Cube is looking to recruit the Nuggets though for the Big Brother house,
The Big Four,
Big Brother house. But yeah, man, Philly, they outsmarted themselves, I think, with the Horford thing, and they signed him to a fat deal. And, that's going to be impossible to trade. I mean, it's not impossible. Nothing's impossible to trade. But, it's rough out there. And this was, to me, the most disappointing performance so far of the first 3 days of this stuff.
This is actually exactly what Sixers fans want, though. Because the team does not look good. And no matter what, if they flame out in the playoffs, they can just say, well, this would never have happened if they hadn't fired Sam Hinkie. Sam Hinkie wouldn't have let this happen.
Right.
Sam Hinkie wouldn't have built this roster. Like no matter what happens, if the Sixers somehow win the title, then it's because Sam Hinkie drafted Embiid and he tanked in order to get them Simmons, even though he was pushed out by then. And then if they lose, it's they would have won the championship if Sam Hinkie was still the GM. So that's just what they wanted the whole time. That's what this is all about for them.
Yeah, and hey, one thing I will say, this is the Philly trap. This is what the Boston trap was. Like, Simmons is really a guy that his want to comes and goes a lot. I mean, obviously at LSU, that was like his MO, that he like didn't really care that much, even though he was such a great player. And in this game, he treated it like a regular season game. And like, maybe that's what it was to them, but like, you got to build these habits of being a good team. It doesn't just happen. And they really don't have any excuses. This team is as healthy as they've been all season. And this is what they looked like. And to me, Simmons 19-13, but he had 53 points hung on him by TJ Warren. So that was his man. And to me, that's like, you can't have that happen if you're Ben Simmons and you're a perennial all-star at this point.
It was a bad loss. You know what else was a bad loss? Both of the Pelicans' losses so far.
Yeah, they blow the lead in the double-digit lead in the first game against Utah, who, didn't even look very good throughout that game. Donovan Mitchell and Jordan Clarkson turned it on. I think Gobert played really well as well down the stretch of that game. And then Brandon Ingram was great through 3 quarters and then just did nothing in the fourth. And they were relying, they really needed JJ Redick to go crazy in that game to keep them in it. And then Utah kind of pulled away late. And then today against the Clippers, they cracked.
That was just a mess. And by the way, so the Amazon Prime quarantine, not going great so far.
No, Adam Silver's Amazon Prime quarantine for Zion to get him into the bubble. He played 15 minutes in the Utah game. He played 14 minutes tonight. I saw that Chris Haynes reported on, he was on the Dan Patrick show, and he said that Zion was a little pissed about the minutes restriction. And then today, David Griffin was playing defense against the narrative on the broadcast with the Clippers game. And he's like, he's the same thing that everyone else is going through, but they waited such a long time to get him here. And the fact that they didn't even play him 20 minutes today when they're supposedly, quote unquote, ramping him up. Like, which one is it? Are you guys ramping his workload up, or do you guys really just don't want to win? Because that's what I'm starting to feel, that from like this strategic thing of the Pelicans. Like maybe Griff and the crew don't really want to be there, which is why the NBA did this whole 22 team thing in the first place.
They might want to check with Adam and make sure they're on the same page about it that way, because there were 222 extra people who were in the bubble because the league wanted Zion on these broadcasts.
Yeah.
A team's traveling party, when you factor in players, coaches, training staff, social media staff, like just whoever else they have with them, the max number for every team is 37. There are 6 teams that aren't currently playoff teams that were invited to the bubble. The only reason that they didn't go to just the playoffs, just the 16 teams that are currently in the playoffs, was because they wanted to figure out a way to get Zion in there. Right. When Zion had to leave the bubble for a family situation, they only made him do a 4-day quarantine because they didn't want him to miss those 2 first games that are on national TV. They didn't want to go 0-2 on that after he missed all of those early national games they put the Pelicans on during the regular season. And then...
Okay, that was the first 10 minutes of this week's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, you got to give us money. Go to patreon.com/BullsVBlazers to sign up. You get one bonus episode per week plus ad-free versions of the regular episode, so go subscribe right now.